Succession Season 4, Episode 4, Honeymoon States is over, but we are just getting started here on Post-Show Recaps. That's right, it's the Succession podcast on Post-Show Recaps, where we are breaking down the HBO show's final season, episode by episode and podcast by podcast. You can get commercial-free versions, I'm talking to you, of the Succession podcast when you sign up at patreon.com/postshowrecaps at any level. That's patreon.com/postshowrecaps at any level for the ad-free versions of the Succession podcast. Hello, everybody. I am Josh Wigler, and today we are talking about Succession Season 4, Episode 4, Honeymoon States. I am joined here by two people who are going to help me break this down in a comic mode, in a humorous vein. It's Grace Leader and Jess Sterling. Grace, what's on that worrisome piece of paper?
That's just the number for my really good grief therapist. I got a good one. And I pre-grieved for today's.
Did you?
Today's pod, yeah.
Jess, have you already grieved at this point? Did you grieve ahead of time? Jess is muted.
Sorry. I would like to note that my name is there. There is a question mark after it, but that just my name is still there.
What type of question mark though is it?
Yeah.
The one with the bubble on for the dot, you know.
Nevertheless, here we are to talk about the fourth episode of Succession's final season. Grace, the first episode of Succession of the full-on post-Logan Roy era, and yet I feel like we are still in the thick of Logan Roy.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly his document that he scribbled on and didn't get his lawyer to sign certainly plays a big part of today. And boy, the scene specifically, Frank has been getting me. I think we had to give a lot of appreciation for Frank as the scene where Kendall is like, "You'll back me," and he's like, "Buddy, son, you want to get back into this thing?
Why?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do this rodeo, pal. Like, come on, you got good things cooking." And
it
it's
seemed so well. You got things cooking.
And it's like
Frank T. Nelson, as we once called the man.
And I feel like what this episode does is I was all week being like, you know what? I actually think there's a chance that the kids can work together and they'll be fine. And for the most part, they do. There's definitely like old school, like, okay, who's going to run the company? And Kendall's like, me. And they're all like, uh-oh. I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Eventually, by the end of the episode, they seem to be on the same page until Kendall obviously is
to
like,
a degree,
I think I should do what my dad wants to do.
To a degree,
like,
it feels like we're in disastrous territory with the relationships, I feel like, already, whether it's the subterfuge of Kendall making the move that he makes, or even just the alliance of Kendall and Roman and what that's doing with Shiv. Shiv's got a whole situation going on as well that I think is blindsiding a lot of us here in the viewing audience. Jess would say not for the Succession Reddit community that apparently had previously called that Shiv would be pregnant.
Yeah, we pointed it out. Was it on the feedback or like the
one of the
weekly
wrap
up?
Shows, yes.
Yeah, and I was like, we don't need to spend a ton of time on this. You know,
but
they're
she's
just
pregnant
making a
in
big
real
thing
life, so
yes.
It's like maybe she just looked a little pregnant in the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm gonna need to watch this episode a few more times and obviously see the rest of the season. I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend. I think, Shiv clearly has a lot of complicated feelings about this topic to begin with.
Yeah.
So how the show unpacks it, I feel like the show, for me, has given me tons of reasons to trust its narrative craft. But I totally understand, like, where is the final season pregnancy storyline?
That's how it feels. It feels a little tropey. But again, I really do trust the show. And of course, immediately we find out she's like, 15 to 20 weeks pregnant because that's when you get the amniocentesis. And so by that math, it is probably Tom's baby, and it probably was conceived on that one really terrible, awful night during her mom's wedding.
Yeah, so this baby was conceived to the tune of "I don't love you."
Yeah,
I love you, but I don't love
anyway.
you. That's the next morning. Yeah,
I think so.
Really love that song. Love that song.
Is he just trying to do all the things that like shows typically jump the shark, but he's like, oh, I got a successful show. I should make sure it jumps the shark before the end of the season. So death, pregnancy, anything else? We've already done a ton of weddings.
He's just sailing right into the jaws of death, and we stand. So here we are on a Sunday night. We are here to serve you our takes on this latest episode episode of Succession. Of course, the programming shout out. We are currently live on postshowrecaps.com/YouTube, live on the Post Show Recaps YouTube page. For people checking us out live, we salute you. We would love to hear from you. If you've got live feedback, we will bake it into the podcast as we go. Of course, we've got the deep dive is coming next. Grace, you're going to be getting back together with Dr. Amanda to break this one down. This should be a really fun one to go line by line, scene by scene. I felt like this was like every episode of Succession is so sharply written. This felt like a very, very tightly packaged episode of the show.
This one is pretty funny as well, so I think we'll have to pull out my trick that I used to do when I covered What We Do with the Shadows with Liz Wilson, where we say, that's a funny line, and we repeat the line. That's going to be so fun to do on the deep dive. We're going to be joined by Matt Huff of Parade, so it should be very fun.
Incredible. I love Matt, so that's going to be really, really fun. The Versus podcast coming back this week. LaTanya and I will do battle with Yellow Jackets and Succession's respective fourth episodes of this year. I'm going to be getting into some more shenanigans with Rob this week. Rob, who continues to look like a prophet when it comes to predicting the deplorable behavior of the disgusting cousin Greg. Gosh, here come the waterworks. What a turd.
He's the worst, but I just have to say, he's always been this way. And
It's gotten, like, I don't know. I feel like volume's up.
I do think he has always been this way, but it was a trick to forget that he was like that. And then when we were trying to do the rewatch, and you're like, he's throwing his grandpa under the bus in episode 1.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he's trying to get in with Marcia, you know? And here comes the
waterworks. And I agree that this was a bad Greg episode. I do not agree with Adam Humphrey's takes of Greg brings nothing.
Greg brings a lot. Greg brings
Fire
a lot.
Everything to the table. And look at how snazzy he looked in his blue suit, I must say.
Yes. Nevertheless, we have to continue with the plugs. The wrap-up show at the end of the week that we're going to be doing on YouTube as well. That's usually on Fridays. This week, it's going to be a Thursday because of my travel schedule. I've got some adventures to go on, so we're going to go a little bit earlier this week. Yeah, I'm going to be taking the private jet, steering clear of the bathroom, holding it the whole time.
Just don't let Carl come on your
don't let Carl in there. Careful with the iPhone. Don't let it near the toilet.
I have also only eaten steak frites and Wonder Bread for 20 years. So
put on your compression socks. You're good to go.
Yeah, sometimes when a show throws an insult at somebody else on the show and it's a real me, but it actually applies to you, so you're like, ow,
it's like,
that
oh
hurt.
wow, I got targeted hard target. The wrap-up show coming Thursday morning on the East Coast. So a really early Thursday morning is what we're going to do for the wrap-up this week. That will also be on postshowrecaps.com/YouTube. You can watch these videos on VOD. We'll plug them into the show notes as well, so you can always go back and check us out. And you can make sure that you never miss any of these podcasts when you are subscribed to be part of the Succession podcast feed. postshowrecaps.com/Succession is the RSS link if you want to search by URL, or you could just search Post Show Recap Succession wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so this week, things happened beyond just, Logan died. So I do have a quick plot recap for you if you are ready. Ready to do this thing?
Ready.
Okay, here we go. Season 4, Episode 4, Honeymoon States. It's the day after Logan Roy's death, and all are gathered at his home. Some to grieve, others to plot, and plenty doing both. Everyone has their eye on the vacant CEO post, even as all agree it's an interim position heading into the Gojo sale. But nobody has a stronger case than Kendall Roy, whose name is found on a quote-unquote worrying piece of paper. It also appears Kendall's name is either underlined or crossed out, who knows, causing some confusion among the invested players, Ken's siblings included. Was Logan backing Kendall or backing away from Kendall? Whatever the paper really means, one thing's clear. It sure as shit doesn't say Shiv. These words prove prophetic as Kendall and Roman form an alliance to share the CEO title, leaving Shiv to shiver out in the cold. They promise to include her in all their decisions, but it doesn't feel like anybody's buying it. And how can we take Kendall at his word anymore given the end of the episode? When Carolina and Hugo offer up a PR campaign that elevates Ken and Rome while torching Logan's memory, the siblings agree to go a less repugnant route, except not really. Behind Roman's back, Ken blackmails Hugo into going forward with the anti-Logan smear campaign, pushing him one step closer to becoming his father's true heir. Elsewhere in the episode, Marcia's back from Milan. She spit shake sells Logan's ginormous apartment to Connor for a ginormous amount of money and subsequently smites Carrie for all to see. Also, Shiv is pregnant and nobody knows except for us. Let's talk about it. It's Honeymoon States, Jess.
So much happened in one episode.
Happening.
And like, okay, first of all, Marsh is back. Amazing, fantastic. None of us thought we'd see her.
You know what? It turns out, Grace, that you can get back from Milan to New York with some relative ease on short notice.
Not from Spain. You can't. Peter Munyon couldn't make it.
No, Peter
back in
Munyon,
time, but
he's
can.
still like circling in the sky, I
He's-
think.
Yeah, he's
I actually
circling.
think that the plane in the poster of the key art for Succession that people are like, oh, that
Yeah.
pissed off Logan Roy.
Yeah.
I think it actually might be a Peter Munyon
Peter
reference.
Munyon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The all
Hey.
important
Yeah.
Peter Munyon.
Yeah, it's the glass Munyon.
Yeah. Jess, I really love that this episode was something that we really loved, when we were, doing the rewatch of Succession, where it's like, I think I'll remember exactly this episode, just like in I was going to say Logan's apartment. I think it's actually, we should be calling it
It's Connor's
apartment.
apartment.
I
Yeah.
actually think the names of the episodes so far this season, I really liked the sort of Connor's wedding title. I think the rest of them have been not that great. This one should have been called Connor's
yeah.
apartment.
Yeah, Connor's apartment would have been great. If everything is just named Connor's whatever.
like
the rest of the
the
season.
one with Connor's blank.
No, I
Yeah.
understand. And I think you also look at the descriptions for the episodes on when it goes up on HBO Max, soon to be Max, and you check it out. Oh gosh, it's going to switch over to Max and the show is not going to be quite over. Gosh, I hope that's not like a Love is Blind disaster. Anyway, so you get like these episode descriptions and they tell you like these things that are technically true from the episode, but they are not like the central defining features of the episode. So it's just that classic like Mad Men-esque subterfuge, like not quite truth in advertising. But I think the titles are doing that as well. Obviously, Connor's wedding as a title is playing defense against the fact that Logan's going to die in this episode, and that's going to be the defining trait. But here, I don't know. You can't like have the next episode be like Logan's wake.
No, you name it. It sure as shit doesn't say Shiv.
I do think like piece of paper could have been a really good name.
Yeah,
for
they say the words piece of paper about a gazillion times this episode.
Yeah.
But
this
yeah,
is
this
a one-off
episode,
line from Willa, like the honeymoon states.
this episode I think is really fun.
Sound
in
like Mike
terms of,
Bloom over there, Jess, with the
Sorry.
anti-Willa
I do
come
like
on.
Willa.
agenda. Yeah.
Bringing everyone together who's still alive, bringing everyone together, like literally this is like maybe the most adventurous. Why is he smiling now? This is the most adventurous I think we're gonna get. Is like literally so many people are around, and we're really setting up, I think, again what like post Logan life is, which is we talked about this a lot on the deep dive about like, is this the suits versus the kids? And it does kind of seem like that, except maybe the kids aren't quite as together as we would like them to be. They all are keeping secrets, except for Roman, who does reveal a secret, which seems to go fine. He's like, yeah, I was secretly meeting with that, and you guys don't have to worry about that. But
they've all done such atrocious things over the years. That's like, oh, that's actually really not that bad at all.
I feel very good about my pick to say that Roman wasn't going to be the first to flip, because he does still, I feel like he is being very genuine when he says, I want the three of us to work. Shiv, you're going to be looped in on everything. It feels real to me that he means those things. And I'm going to get the ick because they all swear on yesterday. We swear on the day our dad died.
It's a dad promise. It's a promise on dad.
Awful. I hate it. I love it. I hate it. I'm literally, as I was watching the end of the episode when Kendall makes the decision Kendall makes, I was screaming at my screen, just like, oh, I can't believe he did it.
Let's make a promise. Let's make a promise on our honor. We'll call it a dad promise, named after the most honorable person who never broke promises that we know.
Humble, gracious.
Yeah, 5 stars. 5-star rating for Logan Roy. That picture of Logan in the newspaper of Brian Cox just being like, it's just such a great.
You ever laugh like that? It's like only when a hobo was burning.
Oh God. He didn't even hug his kids. He didn't even hug his grandkids.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, well, we got to talk about a lot that's going on here in this episode of Succession. I think there are a lot of major headlines at this hour, and thank gosh we have so many different podcasts this week to really dig in and pull the threads together. But we have CEOs. Long live the king and the other king. It's Kendall and Roman.
Greg being such a schmuck in the celebration at the wake, whatever. I'm really worried about Roman here. I feel like I'm really worried about Shiv as well, because she's bottling everything up that is happening. She's like, and agreed to the promise. But I feel like Roman is so vulnerable at this moment. Like he talks about how he's fine. That they're, when they have that conversation where they're talking about how they're all feeling, and Roman says, I'm actually fine. Like I'm actually good at the moment. Like I'll blow up later. I'm like, that's some foreshadowing, because the amount of times Roman has genuine, like, nice. He actually does kind of nice things in this episode. I think is plenty. Taking care of Carrie as she's bawling on the floor.
Yeah.
There's just a ton of Roman moments that I'm just so worried about how fragile this individual is. And I think to the point of truly seeing Roman's vulnerability, I don't know. I think the closest we've gotten is the end of season 3 when he pleads with his dad. He says, I have love. Is it love? And he's on the ground kneeling for Jerry. And last week when he's like, yeah, I'm really sad, and Jerry just leaves the room. I am worried for a full-on, like, this is not going to go well for Roman. I think of Amy. I think, Shiv too, but and Kendall now. So I don't know.
It's gonna go poorly for everybody but Connor. I think is probably how this is gonna
I think
shake out.
Maybe made
a bad purchase.
Mil. I mean, I know he was talking about throwing around 100 mil for the presidential kit, but does he have 60 mil? I guess he's gonna sell the ranch.
It's a lot of money.
Is that the ranch?
He offered up 63 million with no problem. Connor Roy's gonna be all right. Shouts to my editor at THR, Jackie, who just reached out to me. Said, "How does Connor have 63 million dollars?"
This is what I'm saying.
This conversation is happening simultaneously on multiple screens.
Well, he has to have been given some money in the will, right?
Yeah.
He didn't piss off his dad, so at least not that much. But I do agree with you, Grace. I think if I can posit a little bit, predict a little bit as to what I think.
Speculate in a humorous vein.
Yes, I think what might be the inciting
It
incident
is
for
a very funny joke
for Roman is if Kendall goes this route and has bad press published about Logan. I mean, we heard
bad dad stuff.
Yeah, we heard Hugo saying, the physical abuse. I think if anything comes out about Roman being physically abused by his father, I don't know that Kendall would be intending to go that far, but if Hugo interprets that that's what he wants and he goes that far, I think Roman will flip.
If I'm Hugo at this moment in time and I'm so scared to freelance to begin with, then I'm making sure I am just like I am vibe checking Kendall Roy every 5 seconds.
But his daughter did insider trading, so he's so screwed. He's so screwed, Hugo.
Hugo's in trouble. Yeah. No, well, Hugo's daughter's in real trouble. I guess they barely talk, Grace.
That is so the amount of sadness that they baked into one scene where Hugo is divulging to Kendall that his daughter did insider trading, but also he has no relationship with her. So it seems like he called to be like, just so you know, like trying to get a win with his daughter. I'm like, that's so sad.
That isn't even how I interpreted it.
Okay.
I interpreted it as like, so Logan dies. Everyone has the news. They're sitting on it until it's time to divulge it. Hugo can't not think of his like estranged daughter in this moment. Calls her to reconnect.
Oh no!
And then she just like dumps all of her stock. Like it's gruesome. The possibilities really are gruesome. Like even if he is just trying to score a win, that's pretty ugly too. But yeah, Hugo had a pretty rough time here in this episode.
What do you mean? Roman says, thanks, Carolina. Thanks,
F face. Yeah. Well, Hugo was top of Roman's list a couple of episodes ago when asked like, who are you most excited to not see again? And it was Hugo over Frank, which I know. Really, and Roman does not care for Frank. So
that relationship has chilled a bit. Yeah.
It feels like Hugo is kind of the mouthpiece for Carolina a lot of the times, right? Like we all talk about like shit rolls downhill.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop. Like Carolina makes Hugo be the bad cop.
Yeah, because he's like, well, I don't want to say it, but we do have Connor's mom we could go to.
Your Hugo impression is getting so good.
Yeah, it's really been a surprise development here along the way. So it ends up being Kendall and Rome on the other side of the piece of paper, and the piece of paper that contains all of this information from an undated time that states that Kendall Roy shall be the heir to the Waystar Royco empire. There is a catch. It is underlined or crossed out, depending on what you think. Now, Grace, you feel fairly confident that it's a cross out, right?
I do. I know Jess was saying that it's like the first part is underlined. I feel like I love this. I love this.
This is the new Laurel and Yanni. The dress is black and blue. But we're never going to know.
Yeah, to have an unanswerable thing that can cause so much and specifically, I also hate it because I said in the preview pods and in our prediction pods, all I want is for Kendall to be content. I want to be Frank to Kendall. I want to be like, you, buddy, just relax. Just get out. Just don't do anything. Don't be your father. And the whole episode is just a slow Kendall realizing he needs to be his father, and maybe his father. I think
When
this
they
is
go
where,
high, we go Logan.
that's right. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's very funny that we did the rewatch. Episode 1 is like, yeah, I'm gonna name Kendall's successor. By the end of the episode, being like, actually, no, I'm not gonna name you the successor. I'm not gonna back down. And episode 2 is Kendall and Roman secretly agreeing to become CEOs together, and
Yep.
they actually do become acting CEOs together. I think
Right.
so.
And
It's so
Shiv's pissed.
yeah,
So
because
it all tracks.
but I'm think it's a strikeout. I think it's a strikeout. The last two are struck out. It's Logan, Kendall Logan Roy is struck out.
Yeah.
I think it's a strikeout.
It feels
He's not-
very
he's not
starts as an
editing it.
underline.
He's
Well,
not
it's
editing
also-
it to like.
Who's writing in pencil? Am I right? Like
Logan Roy.
Logan Roy writes in pencil? That's surprising. I mean, maybe he uses it when he does his Sudoku. Oh, he's a Sudoku and pencil kind of guy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It makes sense. You
Oh.
didn't know that he played Sudoku, but he does.
but yeah,
This
I'm
is
team
from
underline all the
Chloe.
way.
Chloe says team
Yeah.
underline.
It
Team
starts
underline.
as an underline. To me, that's the intent.
Team underline, team strike through. If you're watching live, impromptu poll, team underline, team strike through. Comment, let us know. Would love to tally as we go.
Well, it makes sense that he'd be a pencil guy because he dies in the bathroom in the number 2 pencil. I don't know. There's something there.
no.
There's something some joke
Joke
there.
there.
There was.
Yeah,
No, that
Carl's
was a-
also a number 2 guy. Is that the joke? That's the joke.
That might be it.
okay.
Or
He's also-
Greg
Yeah.
might have been a soft number 2, I believe, is what he said, and that caused a big chuckle out of Frank. So we have this like sort of like flimsy piece of paper. Is it underlined? Is it crossed out? Regardless, it leaves Kendall feeling like I'm the one. It's me. It's always been me. Grace, the way that I watched this scene, because there is, and I think that the show gets talked about in these big mythological.
It's a Greek tragedy. It's
Yeah, there is something like like there are like the tales of like gods and demigods happening in this universe. Certainly, that's the way they carry themselves. There was almost something like sword in the stone about this moment to me. You know what I mean? Like it's like
yeah.
we see Kendall as like this is his destiny. Like he has arrived. He has arrived at the moment. Every ounce of agony, everything that's ever happened was building towards this thing where after all was said and done, he believed in me. I believe he believes it's an underline. Do you think that he's thinking about it as an underline or a strike through?
I think so he looks at it again and then he goes to Hugo and does the plan of like, this is what my dad would want to do. I kind of feel like in the moment he re-looks at it and he zooms in. I wonder if he thinks it's a strike through because he's like, doesn't matter. Logan would make it. Logan would like advocate that it's an underline. I'm going to go and I'm going to do stuff my dad would do. So yeah, but it's so fun. It's so fun that it's like, this is a small little thing, on a piece of paper. It's so fun.
We have some results here. This is from Torby. Torby says, I'm team Logan, intentionally made it an indiscernible underline cross out hybrid to permanently F with Kendall from beyond the grave. But the impromptu survey, I don't have the exact numbers, but it looks like a cavalcade of underlines with some cross throughs as well.
I think so too. I think the sword in the stone thing too. I think the tragedy, when we talk about like the mythological thing of the succession, the tragedy here is that Kendall, for the first few episodes of the season, was pretty content. You interviewed Jeremy Strong. He talked about, I'm just good to be in the band.
Yeah,
I don't need to lead the band. And the fact that this piece of paper comes out of nowhere, that is just like, oh my God, maybe my dad thought I was the guy. Maybe he thought I was the guy. I don't care when it was.
Maybe I'm his number one boy.
Maybe I'm the number one boy. Maybe he did it 3 days ago. We will never know. And so there's the idea that my dad thought I could run the company. I could be the CEO. It just opens this like can of worms that I do not like for Kendall Roy.
It's the one ring, Jess. It was like lying at the bottom of a brook for so long.
Yeah.
And then these two little hobbits come along. They were totally great friends. And then one of them like smashes the other one's head in and becomes Gollum. This is like the story of like Kendall's de-evolution, I think might be what's happening here. But I don't know which one is Gollum. Who's Frodo? Where's this guy? I mean, it really doesn't work out with the ring for any of them, ultimately. Ring does get destroyed. I don't know if this is going to get melted down.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think
Carl wanted to flush the piece of paper down Mount Doom.
It's true.
Yeah.
I think no matter what, if Kendall, I think if Kendall thinks it's a strike through or an underline, I still think he does the same thing. I think he thinks I was always supposed to be CEO. That was always supposed to be the plan. I think he's thinking back to season 1. And I think when he hears from Frank, no, your dad did love you. I feel like that's just enough for him to be like, no, this, and he gets that greed in his eyes of like, this is what I deserve. I should have this. And I think rightfully so, Shiv seems the most nervous about this because shades of season 1 where she is being left out of things yet again. She's the third wheel. She's always left on the sidelines, and she's in an even worse position now than she was then, where her marriage is failing. She didn't have a good relationship with her dad. And now we know not only is she probably plagued with the guilt of not picking up the 2 phone calls from Tom, but she also feels responsible for her father's death because he was on the plane in the first place. And now knowing, and we don't know that she knows all the dirty details like Tom does when he makes jokes during the speech.
Right.
But like, to a certain degree, yeah, him being on the PJ is what causes the issue because he's not wearing compression socks to look all hot and sexy for Carrie. And he has a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot, which happens when you don't wear compression socks in your Logan's age.
There is a really tragic line that's sort of a throwaway when Tom is talking to Greg during Stephen Root's speech, and they're just like sort of like, you know,
What a delight to
Rosencrantz
see Stephen
and
Root.
Gilden's turning on the side.
Yeah.
Stephen Root hanging out on Barry, I assume. On
It's true.
Final season premiere of Barry. The first 2 episodes of the final season
Yeah.
are happening on HBO right now. As I say these words, we will have podcast coverage from Mike Bloom and LaTanya Starks coming to Post Show Recaps shortly if you're a Barry person. So look out for that. Barry Pod is postshowrecaps.com/Barry Pod is the RSS link for that. But the aside is Tom says something to the effect of he died reaching into his toilet for his iPhone in the clogged toilet. So this feels like maybe if this had been said to Roman, this would be like the worst thing that Roman could possibly hear. I don't know if like the knowing or the not knowing.
Right.
And like, again, like, did he listen to the voicemail and get so angry and then have the attack and die? Probably not. But, you know, the details there and just the way in which like you get to live with that and the uncertainty of all of that. Really, really tragic. So a lot of tragedy baked into this episode as well. Clearly the ratio of tragedy to comedy is highly skewed back towards balance as opposed to last week's episode. In many ways, I thought this was like devastating to watch, but also a total delight to get into the weeds of the post-Logan era.
It was very funny. I thought also just if we're like hitting on the writing for a second, there's so many ways in which the show just continually like calls back to itself. I thought when they're deciding that it's going to be Kendall and Roman, and Kendall gives this line to Shiv that's like, no, don't worry, it'll just be like 6 to 8 months. And I was calling back to the time when she's named successor by Logan, and then he's like, okay, so here's the 5-year plan before
6 months in Berlin, 12 months shadowing me, 12 months shadowing Jerry. Yeah, she's given that same exact line from someone who is a whole lot like Logan. I haven't felt Kendall hasn't been as Kendall-y until this episode. I felt like he has lost a little bit of his Kendall essence. And suddenly he walks into this wake wearing a suit, which again, he's been rocking a baseball cap a lot lately in really inappropriate times. And he felt very Kendall-y to me this episode. And I immediately got that like, I'm a little nervous, as we all should be. Because I think this is honestly inevitable. And yeah, the writing was just so good this episode. Like they had, I don't want to count, but the number of pairs of individuals they were able to have scenes with in this one episode with so much jam-packed and so many things kind of whirling around, so many things they had to get to. Really impressive.
I was so delighted to get to spend as much time with the Keystone Fs as we did. You know, seeing Carl jockeying for the top job against Jerry, Carl and Frank behind closed doors, and Carl even like no longer keeping up that veneer of like, here's our plausible deniability that we're just doing jokes right now. And then literally just like going and like, I need this, Frank. My brother-in-law are half in on a Greek island. It's just there's a lot of time that ended up getting spent with some of these characters who I really am excited about, with Logan no longer lurking on the floor with the sunglasses on where he's not supposed to be, while his shadow still looms large over everything. Jerry says it. She's like, well, Logan's not here anymore, which is so savage, but true. And so now you get to see who a lot of these people really are. Here we have Kendall and Roman sharing the job, and I don't know what it says that all of my instincts right now are to like remember that Roman has the job too. Like I feel like that's where I'm at, because for me, Grace, for me, it feels mostly like Roman not wanting to not be involved, right? Like that seems to be where it comes from for me with Roman, less about like he wants this specific thing and more like he wants to make sure that the family piece, as frail as it might be, is held on to, because finally we are at this point. Does that feel like Roman's involvement in this, or do you feel like he's even more invested? He says it's like, I've got the Mattson relationship. Do you think that he feels like he was anointed by his father with the night before Logan dying, going and seeing him? I don't know. As one of our chief Roman experts, Grace, I'd love to know where you stand with him as the new co-CEO.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is right. When I talked about how vulnerable I think he has all of these moments, I think there's the moment with Carrie where he's showing some real emotional intelligence of like, she's not doing great, and somebody should go help her. And also the moment where he's like, okay, never bring any of this stuff to us to get again when we're gonna shit on Dad. I do feel like it's twofold. It is one that he does want the family to get. He does want. I think he wants so badly for the Sibs. I think someone calls them the Sibs.
That's what they call themselves, the Sibs.
Yeah, the Sibs.
To be a thing that actually works. I think he needs it to work more than Shiv and more than Kendall does. Not only just from a like Shiv kind of needs it to work. She outlines this thing of when they decide that it can't be 3. 2 is effing. 3 is a weird hippie orgy.
Yeah.
That she doesn't have the experience to do it, which is a thing that keeps getting thrown at Shiv, which I kind of hate, because I do kind of think that like Rome and Shiv could have been an interesting, like, I think the two of them could have done it. So she kind of keeps getting boxed out. And so Roman could have been like, well, it could be Ken and Shiv, but I feel like he feels the most like it needs to work so that the 3 of us are together, and the other 2, like whatever reason Kendall needs it to work, and whatever reason Shiv needs to work, is not necessarily the 3 of them are going to work together. So he wants that. And then I also genuinely think he's constantly sort of, I mean, the first episode when we meet him, he's like tried and he like left, and then he's come back, and his dad has always kind of seen something in him. And I do think he is probably right that he feels like he's also best suited to get the deal done, which is the other important piece. Because I think that the big piece of this now, right, is like, even with Stewie was like, all right, if it's you two, but the deal has to get done. It's a good deal.
It's a good deal. We all agree. We like the deal. We like the deal, said the guy who's clearly just going to like hang on to this thing for dear life, right?
Look at this giant empire we could run instead. Instead of just having news, we could run this whole thing. I could do exactly what my dad did, but better. There's a line that Kendall, when Shiv says, you're too much like Dad, and you're also different enough from Dad. And he says, that works. Different but the same, which I think I said this last week, that like he feels like he has the same business instincts his dad does, but he's like a modern take on the business.
And he's always felt that way, right? Like that's always
sure.
how he's pitched himself,
For
where
sure.
he calls his dad a dinosaur, and with Walter from the from episode 1, he's always pitched himself that way. And yeah, I think that what's interesting is that the motives of each individual sibling are so different at this point. Kendall certainly being they all are very much like Logan in very different ways, but Kendall being the one who always felt like he was the prince that was promised. This is always supposed to have been his, and he feels like he's going to inherit it in the way that Logan would want someone to, and with that killer instinct. Roman does feel like he is hanging on by threads to the closeness that he has built with his siblings over the past few months. We have to remember that they've had months together now, working very well together, all of it getting blown up over their father's death, which is
they all
normally
hug in this episode. They like all hug each other.
They all do hug, and there's so many moments this episode where Roman hugs people. He's, you know what I mean? Like he's hugging Connor, he's offering Carrie help. He is the most like sympathetic we've seen him and empathetic we've seen him throughout the entire show in this episode, and probably because part of him is burying that grief very, very deep down inside of him. We have to point out, this is such a weird wake where they're not really taking any time to grieve. It's all business. Like 90% of this episode is spent on business.
Yeah, it's the demolition derby real quick. It's also a weird wake because Colin is there in jeans and he has a kid.
So I loved that.
What's with the Sibs always observing, don't know what to do with your arms? Like, I'm never gonna not be so self-conscious of my arms now. They even like say that about Colin. Like, look at him, he doesn't know what to do with his arms. Roman, like you do. Kendall walks back into the room after all of that, and Roman, like, he goes, ah.
Oh,
and
he falls
just, like,
backwards on
he,
the
like,
couch?
falls
Yeah.
backwards onto the couch, and it does like this triple double roll. It's like so strange. It's just like he cannot take this seriously at all.
Yeah.
Can't move his arms. Come on, get away with this. All right, let's talk about Shiv a little bit more. I think we are finding out that Siobhan is pregnant very early in this episode. As far as we can tell, nobody knows this other than Siobhan and her doctor, who I believe is a different Dr. Sharon from another TV, Dr. Sharon, currently on Apple TV Plus. So we've talked a little bit about like how this makes us feel and like maybe a little trepidation of like where this story could be headed. What are some of the best case scenarios of the Siobhan is pregnant storyline? Grace, does your head go anywhere when you think about like what could this buy us narratively that Shiv is pregnant, presumably with Tom's child?
I think again, the thing I want most for all of them is to just be content with their lives, you know? And so if there's a world where Shiv is like, you know, gosh, there's that scene with her mom. She's like, I shouldn't be a mom. So I'm really worried about her having a kid. But if she can be like, I'm just going to do whatever I can to not be my mom to this baby, that I think is something. I don't think, you know, I feel like I also don't want her final story. I think this might be, I don't know if this is exactly what you're concerned about, Jess, but the idea that like her happy ending is being a mom when she's been so focused on business, that, you know, there's something about that I don't necessarily love. So I wouldn't want it to be, if she becomes a mom and she's a good mom, that's all she I don't think that's a great, and it's not really who Shiv has
It's not
been.
who she is. It's not what she's ever wanted. And I have so much trust in the writers of this show, and like the show has never really steered me wrong for the most part. There's a few storylines I'm not super keen on, but it just, I get a little bit of that trepidatious feeling because it is such a heavily used trope, and because it is, what's concerning to me is that as soon as we find out that a female character is pregnant, that is their storyline. That is their storyline. That's who they are. That's all we care about, right? I myself included, the whole episode, I'm thinking, is she going to tell someone? Does Tom know? Who knows? Is anybody going to notice? Right? Like that's the
There's
thing you
chatter
think
that
about.
like we've been pacing a day an episode, right? So like, are we
Right.
in the 4th day of the season? And if that continues, like, is there a world that we escape the season? Shiv doesn't tell anybody, and this storyline doesn't advance, and it's just sort of like a guillotine hanging over Siobhan's future as we exit.
But then why even do it? Like there has to be some reason to do it. And whether or not it has to do with Tom and their marriage, or like her relationship to the business, or like, again, the thing that gives me most pause is I don't, like you said, Grace, this isn't ever something Shiv wanted. She's talked about, like, she seemed so hesitant. She talks about 10 years down the line when she's married to Tom about having babies. She's not in this mindset. And obviously she is now 15 to 20 weeks along. You know, she's seemingly keeping the baby from what we can tell, right? You're that far along. She's going to doctor's appointment. She's getting amniocentesis done. It just concerns me that this is like a storyline they're doing when it is a bit overdone. And I don't know.
I wonder if it's a little like Sarah Snook is pregnant, so it's like, let's weave it in. The one thing is Tom has wanted a baby, and the thing I think is I actually would love them not to be like Shiv is pregnant, Shiv and Tom get back together, but Tom goes to both Kendall and Roman this episode and is like, I can serve you, I'm at your service. And I do feel like the person he actually, if he knew, that he would get and be like is like the baby. And I do wonder if there's like a way in which Shiv and Tom, not that the story is not they fall back in love, but it's that they realize they're gonna like co-parent a kid together in a way that like Tom can do these things that like, you know, typically maybe like the mom, you know, whatever it is, that like they don't need to be together and they don't need to love each other, but they could both love a kid and want to raise that kid together. Like, in a way.
And I can see some evidence to that because Josh, I was so shocked. We've heard a few times about when Tom and Shiv first got together, she's going through a rough time. I was shocked to hear him bring it up this episode. I didn't think they were ever going to make another reference to it.
That was a bad anecdote.
He's making big moves right now. No,
wasn't that a bad anecdote?
No, she liked it all. Wasn't that happy? No, I like it all. That seems like a positive review
Yeah, it was just I
in a
think
dark time.
it's
yeah.
it's trying to
the
show
really dark time.
Tom as being like a really right because there is a moment where he's trying to be kind to her and she says something a little snotty to him because she's going through it and she doesn't we've seen her push Tom away time and time again and he says let me show you this kindness and I mean I think that's all of us right like just begging Shiv to let somebody show her some kindness in this time because I think I might have been right in that's the most vulnerable we're going to see Shiv because she seems hell-bent on shoving everyone as far away from her as possible. She's screaming at people not to smile, like stop smiling. Of course, this is after she got kicked out of being CEO.
Well, yeah,
What
and
do you make
also
of the
like
fall? What do
Sandy
you make of the
can't stop
fall?
smiling
Yeah.
and it's freaking her out.
The fall to me read very much like she's not as polished as she might want people to think. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly she caught herself. She didn't fall like on her stomach or anything. Not that I saw. I don't think that's the storyline we're gonna get.
Oh, I did not think. I did not.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about
But
that.
she's like trying to clean her, dust herself off, re-button her suit up. Tom's trying to help her. Don't touch me. She's losing it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other things I want to make sure that we hit on. Jess, it was just a couple of days ago that you and I were on the wrap-up show with Adam, and I believe we were speculating because we were doing the character rankings, which everyone should do. Go to postshowrecaps.com/rate Roy to rate every single character. There shall be a payoff down the line. Jess, we were saying, I don't know that we'll ever see Marcia again. Marcia's back with force. Marcia is back.
Shocked.
Hurricane Marcia.
She just roared right back in. Apparently, Grace, we've been missing out on every episode. The first 2 episodes of this season could have ended at night with Logan on the phone having an intimate phone call with Marcia.
Yeah, I wondered if she caught herself because she says we spoke every morning and we have an intimate conversation every evening, and then later she says every night we spoke. So I wonder if there was a little bit of a mix-up in terms of the time that they would speak because they're not real conversations, as Kendall is led to believe.
Yeah.
She's the way she treats Carrie. I mean,
brutal.
Savage.
Kind of fair enough. I think like maybe not that much, but also like, yeah, this is like your husband's mistress who showed up at his wake. I don't know how to act in that situation. When my husband's mistress,
it's just
to my funeral. Never mind. I don't know.
It's a little awkward because she's like waiting for her by the elevator, like ready to kick her out. She won't even
goes to work for Marcia.
Well, I think for Marcia, there's probably like a let's not forget we have heard from Marcia in the past. You go back to season 2 and she's talking to Rhea Jarrell and she says, when I lose a battle, the other person usually loses an eye. Yes. Like it speaks to the savagery of Marcia in a dogfight. And so here she is back. This is really the moment. And I'm so glad that she got brought back into the show because the whole sort of like considerations around Marcia of like, what is she in this for? Does she love Logan? Is she just here for the assets when he croaks? And so now she's here. Willa has that exchange with her of like, look how far we've both come. It's just
Willa does the Paul Rudd. Look at us.
Yeah,
who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought?
I was like, Willa, the audacity.
And she has Carrie come up. I think at least in part, whether it's because of like authentic rage, because we do know from Logan, like, you've embarrassed me. Like, she has said this to Logan in the past when his infidelities were so public, and Carrie is post Rhea Jarrell. So who knows how furious Marcia was about Carrie's involvement in her husband's life. So there might be like genuine rage there, but I think that there's also like display of dominance. I think there's also like 2 lions on the pride, and one can stand and one must fall. And here she is, like, throwing her down into the middle of Pride Rock with Simba helpless but to watch. And I guess that makes Roman Simba. Does that mean he will be the Waystar King by the end of this thing? Probably not. I don't know.
I know it was quite tough to hear, but Jess, I believe you caught what Carrie, because Carrie's saying a lot of stuff to Roman.
Yeah, so Carrie says to Roman that they were planning on getting married. He was going to make a note and maybe it was a note in pencil, and write the lawyer, can you check? And Roman asks a few times for Carrie's private number because he doesn't have it.
Yeah. So she's saying we were talking about getting married. We were talking about getting married is what Carrie says. there is definitely like a world where that's really a wrap on Carrie. Like, what else is there to do here, especially with 7 episodes left? I do think there's another world where something comes of that private number, and Roman getting Carrie's private number, and could speculate a little bit on where that could take Roman and Carrie in a storyline moving forward. Roman pointedly said in this episode, Grace, he is done helping old women cross the street.
That's right. He's done with Jer Bear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is he looking at more age-appropriate relationships and yet still looking at somebody who is like a very inappropriate person to consider in that way?
It's going to be like an edible complex. First he kills his dad just to, ooh.
I have an eye on this. And I just wanted to say it out loud because it's in my head, and so it must be
a lot of
yours as
speculation
well.
last week that Carrie was her reaction is like, you know, there's some.
But
stuff
are we
to
really?
that,
Are we gonna get? Are we gonna get like a Shiv and a Carrie?
I've still called it that, like a little baby Logan Jr., like a baby that gets named Logan.
He's gonna
Jr.
come out
at
an
the end of
old
the
man
show.
with a walker, Grace.
I'll just shout out Marsha saying we're calling Carrie a taxi so she can go to the subway so she can go home to her little apartment.
To her little
apartment. Savage. I mean, part of me, because we're gonna have to give Marsha a score at the end of this week. Part of me wants to give her full marks for how completely savage she is.
Yeah. I just don't want to take my eye off of the potentiality of a Roman and a Carrie. If there was speculation that Carrie was going to get pregnant with Logan's child,
Loman,
but Willie Loman's child. Brian Cox had to have played Willie Loman at some point in time. Anyway, with Logan's child, it could be Loman. It could be. This is what I'm saying. What if that didn't happen? But what if it does? And Roman is a participant player in the existence.
I think it's more on the board than the world ending. So
this could be an Armageddon level event, but also like, could this be the thing that some of these storylines surrounding Roman have been building us towards?
I'm so upset right now.
It's just thoughts. These are thoughts that I don't like to think about, but I have to think about them, or I don't have to think about it. But
this is the same network as House of Dragon. We can.
It's not TV.
A brother child.
It's not TV.
Roman raising his brother child.
Folks, it's not TV.
It's
all right,
Max.
we've got some feedback from people live here. This is from Chloe, who just said, "Ooh, could Carrie and Shiv be pregnant at the same time?" Chloe, that's what I'm saying. But careful what you wish for. Maybe.
We should
yes.
Maybe before tomorrow I give a pause down on that, see what falls out of her purse as a bank.
Yes, I saw pills.
Yeah. Okay, let's get the magnifying glass out.
Enhance.
Just saw pills.
I saw pills.
She saw pills.
There's so many things I need to get enhanced on
Jess,
this
you all
episode.
right?
Oh,
you okay?
Okay.
No, it's late on a Sunday. Okay.
This is used to watching Succession episodes 14 times.
That's right.
Only catching it once is a little.
It's not enough.
It's tough. This is from Belle. Belle said, "Did Jerry, Frank, and Carl change the content of the paper before bringing in anyone else?"
I don't think so. I think that
the
Jerry
risk of that is so high because that is such like a deeply arrestable offense. It feels like
Jerry's a lawyer.
If any one of those 3 cracks, like they cannot,
and they can't trust each other.
They cannot trust each other enough to do that.
The thing that doesn't really work for me is that the letter is not really good for them. Like we see that it's kind of like they know that it's like it doesn't hold any weight, but the fact of it existing, like as they say, like it would be better for it not to exist.
Yeah.
So the fact that it exists and they would like anything that they change on there other than like rating Greg question mark, which would just be a hilarious troll.
Yeah.
From
that
Carl.
would be funny.
But no, I don't think. Again, I feel like this show, for the most part, puts its cards on the table, shows us what's happening.
I agree.
You feel like if that feels like a level thing, it already there's so much mystery to it that I don't think an extra like. They tampered with it.
The other thing is, so Frank is having that conversation with who wants to take a look at the china with everybody.
So subtle, Frank. So subtle.
Tom eating is great.
And he's pulled from that meeting by Carolina, And he is then next seen upstairs as the executor of the will. So it feels like maybe it's something that even Carolina knows about. So like too many potential leaks. Too many potential leaks here.
Carl just ravaging Tom in terms of like why he's not a good fit to be CEO. And that does to feel like end the conversation.
And she doesn't even like you.
You're a clumsy interloper. No one trusts you.
That ends the conversation of Tom being that it never comes up again. And Tom is full on I will serve you mode. He's a butler.
Tom's in trouble. Tom's in trouble for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of new perspectives on underline or cross out. Okay, so this is from Andrew. I think it's cross out. It would have made sense if Kendall was written from when it would have made sense if Kendall was written in from when the show started, and then since he was crossed out. That's Andrew's take. This is from Chloe. Chloe says, speaking of someone who's a terrible underliner, I often drift up on the underline, but a strikeout, you start in the middle, not beneath. I can't believe we're debating
I love this.
That's a great point, but Chloe is not an 80-year-old man, I don't think. So.
Can I give you an update, Josh? Because I did do an informal poll on Twitter. So it has 64 votes.
Okay.
We have 57.8% say team underline, 42.2% say team strike through. Honestly,
I think these are people who just want to believe in like, oh gosh, everyone just commit to the underline. This is all going to be so terrible if you're all talking.
Why do you underline it? I think someone said, but why do you underline it?
Because he made addendums and he's like, oh, hey, in case you didn't know who that was, I'm gonna underline it.
In case the bolded name, I just gotta really make sure I
gotta underline it.
This is
an addendum.
From Nomies. He wouldn't even hug his grandchildren. I felt bad for laughing so hard within the context of Kendall saying that.
The scene where they're describing, they're translating newspaper speak to be like, oh, that line means he's racist. That one means he's good with sexual assault. It's also brutally funny. That's very funny.
It's really savage, and I really appreciated it. I think like the way that the show has now, after having the episode where you had to handle it and it had to happen within the episode. It's the day later. None of these people got sleep. It looks like Roman looked well rested. He looked fairly well rested. Maybe the pre-grieving was real.
I just think this felt...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this felt really real too. Like this is, I mean, I don't mean to presume what everyone does with their own families when they have like memorials or something, and maybe it's not the direct day after, but like you do tell these kind of stories, and you do like you especially with like very close family, you're like, yeah, but this guy kind of like also sucked a little bit, you know,
just a touch.
Did Kendall have midnight therapy? Sorry,
he did. He did.
I guess the night of his dad, like I guess that does make sense. I'm sure
we love Roy going to therapy.
I thought that was what the night agent on Netflix was about, right? He was just like somebody at night who would take phone calls and help you out. I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
J.R. Tolkien, I think, talking about Marsha. J.R. talking about Marsha. Showing up at the wake is a form of shopping, to be fair, is what J.R. Tolkien says. So maybe the name of the apartment was Milan. You never know. Could make sense. This is from Nick. Nick says, my best guess is that the baby brings Shiv and Tom back together in a dark and unhappy way. That's what's going to feel the most real. I am unfortunately inclined to agree with either that or not finding out anything further about Shiv being pregnant. I think is a Succession-y thing that they could potentially do.
I keep accidentally predicting happy endings and then have to remember, like, as Succession.
I don't think so. I don't think so, unfortunately. Let's see. What else do we have from Bob and Rob? Kendall at the end was exactly who Logan wanted him to be, the number one boy. I think that this is something that's worth sort of chewing on a little bit, is whether or not it was underlined or crossed through. That Kendall, I guess whether or not he believes it, it does. It's not that it doesn't matter, but there is a world where Kendall, even suspecting that it's a cross out, the Loganish thing to do is to just take it and take it and make your own pile. So I think like the question is kind of irrelevant, and really the only thing that matters is what does Kendall do with the information.
I think it's also a good thing to question, does Kendall do this if he doesn't have the information on Hugo? Because he doesn't have the leverage if Hugo doesn't tell him when he told him. So is this a thought that crosses his mind without having that information?
No, maybe not. But this is like, these are the killer instincts.
Exactly.
This is the stuff that Logan always said that Kendall lacked. And it's almost like We're all Dungeons and Dragons fans at this particular panel. This is like Warlock mode, and like Logan is his patron, and like Logan is like whispering in his ear, and Kendall is operating in kind. So typically, I believe low wisdom with this this kind of
high
affair.
charisma Warlock.
Right.
Yeah.
I do. The writing on the show is excellent. I do think, as I'm sitting it through, the Hugo telling Kendall scene is a little bit sloppy, I think, in terms of like needing something for this last scene to happen. Why would Hugo tell Kendall? It just seems silly that he goes and tells Kendall that, like, hey, I did insider trading.
Yeah, and the piece of paper feels a little bit like, of course there's a piece of paper.
I
right?
love the piece of paper.
Piece of paper, I'm in.
The piece of paper is hysterical, but it also is a little bit like, but of course there's a piece of paper.
Yeah, well, Logan's got to continue to contribute from beyond the grave. So I think
Hugo does not have to continue.
Yeah, I think we need we're gonna need to start lining up some blood sacrifices here. So if Hugo's head is on the chopping block over a couple of the other characters who could potentially be in the demolition path, I think I'll take it.
Yeah.
Just a couple more here. Jess, this is from Will, who's saying that grin on his face at the end. Chilling.
Horrifying.
When you juxtapose the first image of this episode and the last image, it is a Kendall Roy who has not slept a wink because his father has just died and he's grieving, and you can see it. He's wearing it. By the end of the episode, he is like possessed by the devil and smiling at Hugo the way that Logan might do.
He has that like poop eating grin, right? The poopy.
Yeah.
He looks like he just got away with something in a way that we've seen him look previously, and it's scary.
Final one. This is from Taylor. Just Carl and his brother-in-law on a Greek island. I want to believe that this is Taylor making a pitch, and I am buying. I guess let's do this as the actual last one from Nicholas. Ultimately, what do you think happens at the end of the series? I'm going with the sale does not go through, and honestly, I think the most unexpected happens with Greg being CEO. I want to just like leapfrog off of this and ask if we can make some predictions here as to whether or not the sale goes through. We have a whole week to talk about this and so much more in the podcasts ahead. But where we leave it, Grace, with Kendall and Roman in charge, stating that they love the deal and they want the deal to happen, that the deal has to happen. Is the deal going to happen?
I do think the one piece of like that's always happened is like there's always kind of something that's looming over them that they always get out of. And so I actually do, for a long time, I was in the camp of I want them all to be content with their own thing. They could be doing something separately or whatever. A lot of the theme this season has been like the siblings working together. That would be nice if it happens. I kind of maybe wonder, I kind of think at the end, is it them like running Waystar? I know they say like three, they can't have three CEOs.
The 3B.
But is it that? And so then the final thing is like, well, you did it. So what? So what? Like what for? You could like all this stuff just for what? This that you got? I feel like that could be on the table. Or maybe just like maybe it is just. I mean, the fact that Kendall and Rome get named CEO here again leads me to believe that they will not be CEO by the end of the season.
Yeah.
This feels bad. It's so many times. It's like it's just interim. So I don't know.
Jess, is the sale happening? Are we going to Gojo? Yeah. No.
Matsson is so temperamental, and he's already like ticked off that Roman didn't answer a phone call immediately. Absolutely not. I think they're gonna have a big blow up with Matsson. I think he's gonna get aggravated. He's gonna say absolutely not, no. Yep. And I think with having three again, with Logan being the powerhouse that he was one person making decisions, right? It's very easy to be a single person making decisions. You don't have other people to consult with. I think the three siblings are all going to have different opinions on what route to go. I think it's going to kind of mix things up a bit too much, and it's going to ruin the deal with Matsson.
And then just to that final point from Nicholas, Will once again commenting here, the Greg with a question mark feels like a little gimme for the fans saying Greg might come out on top.
We all want it.
Yeah,
except Rob.
I think so.
The rest of us want it.
Anyway, we are just getting started here with the fourth week of Succession's final season. Plenty more podcasts still to come. Coming next is the deep dive with Grace and Dr. Amanda. Then I'm getting together with Latanya Starks for Versus. We're putting this one up against Yellow Jacket Season 2, Episode 4. I'm going to get into it with Rob later in the week. Thursday morning. I think we said 8:30 a.m. on the East Coast. Get your coffee, come saddle up. Before you fire up your computer, we're going to be live on the wrap-up show, postshowrecaps.com/YouTube, looking at the week in review on Succession Season 4, Episode 4. Then it's going to start all over again with Episode 5. Make sure you're subscribed. Postshowrecaps.com/subscribe is our big subscriber hub. You can check out a whole bunch of stuff from there. If you just want the Succession pods, postshowrecaps.com/succession is the RSS link if you want to search by URL, or just look Post Show Recaps Succession wherever you get your podcasts. If you want them commercial free, sign up to be a patron at any level when you go to patreon.com/postshowrecaps. Any level you sign up, you're going to get the commercial free versions of these Succession podcasts. Grace, anything else that you want to make sure we hit before we close up for the night?
No, it's really, I think, a bit of
great episode.
A great episode, a bit of a slower moving up, but a really richly written dialogue episode. I keep thinking about the thing Dr. Amanda said about how the show does so much exposition through by just through dialogue that's not saying exactly what's happening. Like I said, Hugo's doing insider trading. He never says he did insider trading. Just what you get out of that scene. So very, very well written, very fun, and certainly sets up some momentum for the rest of the season.
Jess, final thoughts on this episode of Succession before we talk again.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think my enjoyment of it will definitely change as time goes on, probably after a few rewatches, but also in how some of this gets played out. Because a few of these choices I'm a little bit hesitant about, but I do trust the show to make. I mean, I've heard this season is a killer season, so I can't wait to see what else they have.
Some killer moves already. Yeah. I guess we didn't really even talk about the fact that did we miss Logan? How did we feel? There was no Brian Cox in a whole episode of Succession. It still felt
his presence was there. So,
yeah.
It
did feel he was still in it. Yeah. That's
the sweater.
Yeah.
The sweater with the Roman and the sweater.
They put Stephen Root in the episodes.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
Got a lot of fun cameos too. No Mencken. But
he was on his way up.
being there.
So interesting.
Episode cut before Mencken showed up, but I am sure that we are not done with the Jared Mencken of it all. We are certainly not done with Succession Season 4, Episode 4. The podcast coverage continues on the Deep Dive next and all the other shows coming up later in the week. Grace, where can people find you on the internet?
At Hi from Grace.
And Jess?
At the Jess Sterling.
All right, folks. We'll be back soon with more Succession podcasts. Until then, F off!